Welcome back to the finale of the Podcast Guesting Masterclass. This is session 4, and I am your host, Jessica Rhodes. I am the founder and co-owner of Interview Connections. We're the world's first ever and leading podcast booking agency over the last 12 years. We have booked over 30,000 podcast interviews. We've represented more than 800 entrepreneurs inside our agency and have taught tens upon thousands of entrepreneurs through this masterclass how to leverage the power of podcast guesting to increase your brand awareness and grow your business online. We have taught you this week how to lay a strong foundation for your podcast guesting strategy, our top tips for monetizing your visibility as a guest. Yesterday in session 3, we gave you tens? We gave you a lot of strategy. I think we have 10 tips on how to repurpose your podcast appearances. Use them for content on social media, leverage them with your email list, leverage them with your sales prospects. So who here was at session 3 and has some awesome things they're going to implement to fuel your social media content, repurpose those interviews? Because yes, Andy's going to implement. I love it. Who here has already implemented something from session 3? Like maybe you grabbed a podcast appearance, put it into Opus Clip, and already put out some short form videos on your Instagram or your LinkedIn. Yes, Jen said, you bet. Amazing. So if you did not catch session 3, you definitely want to go back to the replays. Those are at interviewconnections.com/replays. And you'll have access to the recordings until Monday at midnight. So you just still have a few more days to catch those. The doors are open to our Amplified Authority program, and we are offering some amazing discounts and bonus gifts that expire on Monday at midnight. So go to interviewconnections.com/call to book a consultation call with Douglas or Julio from Team Interview Connections. They will meet with you. We have times open this afternoon, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So there's plenty of time to meet with us to make sure that you can lock in those discounts and bonus gifts. We still have 2 paid in full bonus offers where I'll do an interview audit for you, where you can get a bonus interview audit. So that's for the next 2 people to pay in full. And again, if you pay in full, we'll write your one sheet for you. Everyone who signs up during this masterclass is going to get our equipment bundle. We're going to get you on 30 podcasts guaranteed. And honestly, you're going to hear a lot about what you get throughout this session as our speakers here share a little bit about what their experience has been like, the lessons they've learned, the wins they've had. So without further ado, we're going to dive right into our first speaker today, who is the amazing Wendy Cole. So Wendy Cole, come on up on the stage with me here. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Hi, Jessica. Hi, everyone.
So Wendy, you've spoken in this masterclass before. So I'm gonna give you the stage here, but start from the beginning. First, just introduce yourself for those who haven't seen you speak before. Who are you? And let's get the before, the during, and the after.
Sure. Before Interview Connections. Hi, I'm Wendy Cole. I'm a transition mentor specializing in helping individuals navigate significant life changes. My expertise ranges from supporting transgender individuals and their parents to empowering women entrepreneurs to conquer imposter syndrome and self-doubts. My visibility was solely dependent on social media before Interview Connections. And I realized I needed to expand to broader audiences and become hyper visible to attract and build trust with highly closeted potential clients. The podcasting transformation. My mission expanded. My mission is to humanize being born transgender for the rest of society while providing support to both those undergoing transition and their families. The personal growth and professional growth and change has been phenomenal, all because of podcasting. It's had a huge impact on my networking, my visibility. I've educated hosts and their audiences, even those who are gay. I've developed host relationships that have been invaluable for added visibility and getting things out to people. I'm using the content from podcasting to write 2 books, and one is in editing mode and will go to publisher later this spring. I'm also co-hosting my own podcast now. The result is I'm actually promoting social change and using the podcasting platform and podcasting to promote social change around my podcast and the community that I'm forming. I'm changing people's perspectives through conversation and information. And I'm bringing myself and other transgender people together with cisgender people to have open, honest conversations and change their perspectives. It's definitely been a worthwhile effort, everything that I've done with Interview Connections. And I also have expanded to provide consulting services to businesses and organizations on transgender related issues. And I'm available for speaking engagements. And I've been invited to speak in a local church and a local business. So that's starting to grow. Transitioning has profoundly impacted my life over the last 10 years and enhancing not only my physical, but also my mental and emotional well being. And podcasting has given me a platform to expand on that globally. I've connected with hosts around the world. It's been phenomenal. And as far as any recommendations for the rest of you sitting here, like I was several years ago, don't hesitate. Just do it. You won't regret it. The guidance and support you're going to receive from Interview Connections is phenomenal. I absolutely love their staff and everyone that I've met there. It's been just a wonderful experience.
I love it. Yeah, I love the big picture that you share here because you are really having such a positive impact in creating social change. You're somebody that has, connected and been interviewed by hosts who you've said, like, you can ask me anything, which is so
Mhm.
important. And then you've also had the really tangible business results. I mean, I love that we're in a ongoing conversation on, Facebook Messenger. My door is really open to my clients. I want you to share your celebrations with me and your successes. Like, you've had people that heard you on podcasts and said, I want to work with you, I want to coach with you, I want to book a call with
Right.
you. Tell us a little bit about some of those experiences.
I've actually um made a lot of good connections that way. Um, I've established myself too. It's given me authority when I wind up sitting in front of a group of people. Like I get invited to support groups, things like that. And when I'm sitting there now, I'm not I'm not in the position of trying to convince them that I know what I'm doing. I have authority because I've been on approximately 50 podcasts so far. And I get invited to other people's podcasts when they hear me, they see me, I get invited. It's just been a wonderful experience.
Yeah,
And
it's so powerful. Like the positioning to say,
mhm,
I've been on over 50 podcasts. We have Dr. Jolie coming. She's been on hundreds of podcasts. That's the power of doing this long term and not just doing it for a few shows. But when you can say to someone, I've been on, over 50 podcasts, hundreds of podcasts, there's an immediate credibility there.
exactly. And what's also amazing too is they're evergreen.
Mhm.
Podcasts that I did in 2023 are still getting me connections, are still out there, and people are listening to them and resonating with them.
Yeah.
Um, I've also started um, improving my speaking abilities. I started Toastmasters, went to a local group, got involved with people, and it's been fun.
Yeah. I love it. So, Wendy, what is one tip, about podcast guesting? And you've already told people just do it, don't wait. So let's, book your call at interviewconnections.com/call. But what's one lesson for everyone who's going to take action, start getting on podcasts? What's one tip you can give from your lived experience doing over 50 podcasts to help them be successful with the strategy?
The content that you create by being on shows is invaluable. The software tools that I've learned how to use over the last year and a half or more have been invaluable. I I use all my content now for newsletters, for blog posts, for my social media posting. I use the videos and use the clips for all of my social media, and video is absolutely the way to go for actually communicating with people and making connections. Um, Social media alone doesn't do it, but the social media benefits from you being on podcasts and
Yes.
benefits in big ways.
Yes. So that's huge. Everything Wendy's talking about here, session three. Go back to session three, get all those tips and implement, get on podcasts and repurpose the content, get those clips onto social media. That's going to be huge. You know, you're going to have people following those clips and then reaching out to you. So, Wendy, where can people connect with you?
MeetWendyCole.com. Thank you for that, Jessica.
That yes, and what she's saying thank you is because we always tell our clients like have an easy to remember URL,
Hmm.
have a domain that people can quickly, meetwendycole.com. That's easy to remember. It's going to bring you right to a site where you can meet with Wendy Cole. So thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you, Jessica.
All right. Our next speaker, Gabriella Mbon, is here to share her podcast guesting journey and success story. So, welcome, Gabriella. We'll get you unmuted and up to the virtual stage here.
Thank you so much. Wow, what a beautiful, beautiful crowd you have. And I can, I'm going to start from the beginning, but let me just go to the end first and say this has been probably the best business decision I made in years, joining your group. So, but I'm gonna go back and share with you a little bit about what made me choose your company, not just podcasting, but specifically your company. So I'm a certified coach and author, and I've dedicated over 2 decades helping high achievers and working with couples, power couples, to engineer legendary relationships. And last year, I launched my book, Becoming a Power Couple: 4 Pillars to Engineer Legendary Marriages. And I knew that I wanted to reach more people. Yes, after 2 decades in the industry, people know me. I'm well known within my area and my students, but I knew it was time to go global. Pretty much like Wendy said, social media was not the right strategy. I knew that. I've been there anyway. So I look for the podcast as the channel to bring my message out. And I actually had several meetings with different companies who offer, I'm not going to say that I now understand probably it's not the same service, but similar services. And from the moment we met, my husband and I met with Jessica, it was very clear that you know exactly what you're doing. And not only you know what you're doing, it's coming from your heart, that you're not just saying empty words. So that sales call that you did with us was it was really what made us sign up with you, because we felt your service, we felt your intuition. So that was the end of September, I would say. I signed up with Interview Connections. The journey has been extremely rewarding in many ways. First of all, interviewing with people that I thought I would never be able to speak with. And I have experienced speaking and even teaching, but this has been so revealing to learn to tell stories, to learn to share information that is not in a teaching way. And somehow I can so appreciate the service you provide, because I have a podcast myself, and companies similar to yours contact me, and I can see the difference in the service. Somehow the way you introduce me to every host was very empowering, and you did the heavy lifting. And then closing those podcasts was extremely easy. And every host has been, people follow the consciousness of the leader. So every host has been a pleasure to work with. I think it's a matter of energy match. So yes, of course, I wanted to expand my reach and become a thought leader in in the theme of marriage and relationship coaching and building legendary marriages. And I find that halfway through, I think we are, the first year has been, I'm already there in a way. So great visibility. Those hosts, because they're so adorable, actually have become my guests. So it's easy for me to have, to expand my own podcast as well. So I'm going to share the wins right away. I got booked to speak on stage in front of 150 people at the end of April in a 2-day conference about technology. And they wanted to bring an expert in how to manage work-life balance for high achievers and people with dreaming careers. So that was a huge, huge win. One of the hosts asked to work with me. She brought me into her show. She interviewed me. She loved it. She joined a masterclass that I did of an hour with her husband. Then she said, we want to work with you for 6 sessions and bring you back to the show to share our experience, our own transformation as a couple. So as you can see, only within a few months, I would say October until now, the change, the transformation, the growth has been more than I could expect. Incredible. I think that one more thing I want to mention is that halfway through, I realized that I wanted to not rebrand, but kind of tweak the audience I was talking to, because I was mostly booked with one type of podcast, which I chose. And then I decided that I want to, now that I'm more clear about my message, I want to shift a little bit. And all I had to do was send an email to my case manager
Your
or whatever.
point of contact. Yeah, your
Yes,
point of contact.
Amelia, she's amazing. And she right away booked a meeting with me. And we went through the first, like the onboarding process, if you might call it, again. And we were able to write the success criterias and redo our 1-page sheet and everything again. So that flexibility and understanding that we're growing together, because as you're working with us, I am growing and you're willing to change with me. That was huge for me. Coming from somebody who has an academy, I know how important customer service is, and that tells a lot for me. It's not, well, that was the deal, we did it once, now you're stuck with that. So that was huge. The podcast audit that you did for me was also extremely valuable, teaching me how to do this better. So I have only good words, good feedback to say. I have recommended your company to several people. Yeah, it's not just, like Wendy says, it's not just a marketing strategy. It's a whole journey of growth and transformation. And the support, all the trainings, and some I'm attending live. Some I was at the gym listening to the podcast you did with Isaac. So I'm always listening to your trainings if I cannot attend live. So yeah, I really appreciate the dedication.
Thank you so much. Sheena needs your book. So can you please tell everyone how can they find you and get your book?
Oh, yes, I'm going to put it on the chat. It's basically on Amazon, but people can find me either at gabrielaembon.com or they can go to becomingapowercouple.net. That's the name of the book. I want to say that if you have a book, I don't know if that's okay if I have a minute. Yeah, one tip that I would offer is that if you have a book or a report or any piece of information, send it to your host. When I would reply the initial contact that you will approach me, I would ask the host, would you like me to send you my book? And that made a huge difference, because even that host who booked me to work with her husband, she had read my book. So she knew what she was, she was going to hear. And it's so much more powerful when people interview you after they've read your material.
Yeah.
Because now they become part of the conversation, not just asking you questions, right? They relate to quotes or chapters in the book that resonated with them. So yes.
That's such a good tip. Yeah. And that really goes into nurturing your relationship with the podcast host. Send them your book. If you don't have a book, like what do you have that you can send them? Maybe you could say, here's a link to a podcast I was on if you have a chance to listen, anything that you can do. So GabriellaMbon.com. Thank you so much, Gabriella. I love your success story. I love that you signed up at the end of September and you're here in March sharing that you've been booked on a stage. You've had a host become a client. It's been such a transformational experience. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for everything you and your team does for us, for all of you.
Oh, I love it. Well, everyone, book a call because let's get you up on a future masterclass sharing your success stories. So next up, we have Christina L. Woods. Christina, come on up and join me.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you.
Same here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. You're, again, one of my favorite success stories because you were in this masterclass
It was.
several years ago, shaking in your boots, nervous about making this investment. And here you are, like badass Brains Magazine cover, cover girl. Tell us, share your story.
Yeah, sure. So you're right. I was shaking in my booty before. And when I started working with you, and the reason I decided to work with you was I was about a year and a half into a new business in a brand new industry. I had just left a 30-year industry that I was not shaking in my booty and I was very comfortable in, to start something new in hypnotherapy and coaching and energy healing. And I just realized that I really needed to build credibility and get out there and speak and let people know who I was. And I really had heard about this podcasting thing and watched your master class. And so that's when I decided, this was the best way at this stage in my life and this early stage of my business to get out there and really start building credibility. And I had literally no idea what it would do for my business other than, hey, world, here I am. I'll talk about all the transformation and what it really did for me, which was incredible. But that's where I was, and that's when I began, not even realizing then, not thinking then at that time that I was qualified, that I was ready. What would I talk about? Would you guys even take my money? You guys have heard that story. So yeah.
Yeah. So share a little bit. And while you're speaking, I'm going to grab a link to because you and I, back in December, just a few months ago, we did a full hour training on how, as a coach and an energy healer, you've grown your business through podcast guesting. So for anyone who wants like a full hour of your story, there's so much to share, but share a little bit and I'll grab that link for the chat.
Yeah. So the biggest transformations that I've had is, there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of hypnotherapists, energy healers. And I think the biggest thing that has helped me is in my business grow and personally is just nailing down my messaging and what makes me unique and humanizing what I do. Because one, hypnotherapy scares people. They don't know what it is. They watch Netflix, what is this? So just really humanizing it through stories and results and sharing my personal journey to get here of transformation. So, and just having normal conversations with people. So that relationship with the host has been incredible. Many hosts have become my clients. Interview Connections told me that would happen. And I would say the first 6 months, I was very nervous to speak with hosts. But as I started to implement techniques and conversations before the show would start and afterward, it almost instantly happened where hosts would become my clients, their children, their spouses would become my clients. So that was a huge transformation in my business and personally, just humanizing what I do, having people get to know me. Because again, there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of people that do what I do, but we all do it our way. And so being able on a podcast to share who you are and what makes you unique and just that energy behind who you are, it comes through in a conversation, and it speaks volumes. It just does the work for you. That's been the biggest message. And fine tuning, there's been many times where I've revisited my one sheet, like the previous speaker said, where I was doing shows and then all of a sudden I wanted to pivot and I wanted maybe to speak on different types of shows. We just quickly would change the one sheet or what type of questions I wanted to ask or what shows. And it was a quick pivot, and we were able to do that over the years that I've been working with you.
Yeah. And you're somebody that has, you've renewed with us multiple times. We're inviting everyone to join our Amplified Authority program. You get on 30 podcasts, and it doesn't end at 30 podcasts. That's how you start with us, but you've renewed, you keep going. Why is that? Why wasn't it just a one and done thing for you?
Yeah, I've done over 100 now. So, and I keep renewing because the benefits keep improving. So yes, the investment financially is a big one. Financially, it's paid for itself. I get many clients from this. So financially, my business is growing, my business is expanding, but the content that I can have, it makes my life easy. I get to make videos, I get to repurpose content, I get to create blogs and emails, and I have fun, I network, I've become a speaker on stages, something that you don't know recently, just from messaging, getting more and more specific in my story. I recently submitted something and I'm going to be published in a book, a chapter that I never would have done had I not said my story over and over on podcasts. It was just a natural evolution, and I got chosen, and now I'm going to be published in a book. So, and it was really all because of podcasting. So visibility, credibility, you are already the expert. So being invited, I'm constantly being invited to things because I already have that established, and I'm not giving that up. I'm going to continue to do these.
Yes, I know. I always say that. I'm like, this is visibility, it's relationships. Like, why would you cut those out of your marketing strategy?
Yeah.
It just makes no sense. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Christina. I've dropped the link in the chat. So, for people that want to spend more time with you and me, they can go watch that video that we did in December. Well, how can everyone connect with you online who's interested in learning more?
Yeah, it's ChristinaLWoods.com.
Amazing. Thank you for being here. And for those of you who are excited, you're inspired, you're like, okay, I've been thinking about this and I want to do this. Interviewconnections.com/call, book a consultation call. You'll meet with Douglas or Julio from Team Interview Connections. You'll have a one-on-one Zoom call to make sure it's a good fit, to get your questions answered. And our masterclass discounts end on Monday. So take action now and book your call. All right, next up, I'm so excited. Dr. Jolie Hamilton is in the house. Dr. Jolie and I have worked together since 2020. She was in this masterclass 5 years ago, and I just love her. So Dr. Jolie, come on up.
Hello. Hi, Jess. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm a little starstruck, and I've worked with you for so long, but you're just like such a badass. So please introduce yourself to everyone. Dr. Jolie and I are very close, but I'm still like, it's good to be starstruck by your own clients.
Yeah, we are close. And that is actually one of my favorite things about this. I had no idea that this was a little bit like being invited into a tight-knit family, because Interview Connections really has been there for me through the last 5 years. It's been spectacular. Yeah, I'm a depth psychologist. That's DEPTH, not DEATH. I studied Jungian and archetypal psychology. So nobody knows what to do with me. I am one of those people that you're like, where do I put this girl? And then on top of that, my specialty is non-monogamy and jealousy. So traditional marketing routes, just not going to work. Not going to work at all. What I do is help people make the transition from monogamy to non-monogamy, but it was actually podcast guesting that let me double down and actually focus on this pretty niche, right? It's tight. When I came to you in 2020, I had written a book based on the business I was running at the time, and I still love, but it's not where my whole heart was. And I needed to discover that. I was working with entrepreneurs in pretty traditional looking relationships. It was great. Podcast guesting was great. It got it got me out there. I was promoting that book that I had just written, and really quickly, it was only about 6 months in that I was like, this is great, but, and you asked me a question. You asked me a great question about like, it feels like there's something else. It feels like you're not quite there. You're not quite being yourself. And you are so totally right. I was hiding some of what my research had really been about. I was like, it was like I had two businesses and I was like bifurcated and I was a little fragmented. And you reminded me that there is a podcast for everything. So
Very true.
that was the moment for me where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go all in on what I actually care about, what I actually love talking about, which is jealousy and the mess that happens when we reconstruct our relationship reality.
Yeah, I love that you shared that story because when people ask me, like, Jess, how soon will I see my ROI? It's different for everyone because, are you where Dr. Jolie was in 2020, where the first 6 months was realizing you were hiding what you actually had to be talking about? Well, it might be the beginning of year two that you see your ROI, so it just depends on where you're at. But that's why it's great to work with us, is because we'll spot that. Like, if it feels like something is still missing, like, we will listen to your interviews and point that out.
Yeah, yeah, you caught me in a trap that I had created for myself. I was trying to blend in when that's the exact opposite of what I needed to do, and it is not in my nature. I mean, at all to do that. But you know what? The pandemic had freaked me out, and I did what a lot of people around me did, like, let me find a safe plan B. But that just doesn't actually work. And it was actually through going on shows over and over again and being asked questions and realizing, oh, I am not giving my best interview. I am not giving my whole self to them. And finally being like, yeah, okay, let's change up the one sheet. Let's go all in. And from there, it actually wound up transforming my entire business and my business model. I saw ROI in month 11 in a big way. Like it was like a 4 times ROI. It was huge. But then from there, it was just exponential because I changed the business model, which means not only did I make money differently, but I got my time back. I got to completely rework how I work with people. And I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't been doing these constant interviews. I just hit 200. I'm a little over 200 now because I've been booked by you guys for several years. And of course, there's all the times I've been asked back. I've been asked back by more than a third of hosts have asked me to come back. And then I get found. I get found really easy because I have a unique specialty.
Yeah. So I want you to highlight both the traditional media outlets, because sometimes people are like, should I do PR and go try to get in magazines and news articles, or should I do podcasts? And you've done both by investing in podcast guesting.
Yeah, I went the route of podcast guesting because it felt knowable. Like I felt like, yeah, I'm good on my feet. I know I can talk to people. And PR, I had been burned by that in previous businesses where I had invested heavily in PR and it just felt like I was throwing spaghetti at the wall. I never really knew what I was going to get back. I didn't have any expectations of getting into mainstream sources, but I have. I've been in New York Times, NPR, Vogue, The
The
Atlantic.
Atlantic.
CNN just this year. So
What?
like, yeah, like I didn't expect that, but you use the phrase like dominate Google, and that's not really my language, but like seriously, if you type in jealousy, like I am gonna pop right up. I'm right there. I have had I've stood on the red dot for TEDx, and that makes me so findable that yeah, recently I got a phone call out of the blue from Sanjay Gupta's producer saying, we need somebody for jealousy and you seem like the one. Would you come do a pre-interview? Did the pre-interview. And because I was so practiced at my interview skills, I mean, the producers were like, this is fantastic. Go for it. Just dive in. Even though they knew that like my topic is edgy. This is a very mainstream audience. And so they wanted to stick to the jealousy aspect that I talk about. And that was another thing. Interview Connections helped me figure out how to have like a two-pronged approach. So I have my classic jealousy research. I'm a qualitative researcher. And so I can present that to a more mainstream audience and to that edgier audience, or the people who are ready to like have a different kind of conversation. I can also go deep on all things custom relationship, creative monogamy, non-monogamy, polyamory.
Yeah. And now that you've been on, 200 podcasts and we're just on Dr. Sanjay Gupta's show, would you like, I mean, I just kind of like, I'm leading the witness here. I'm like, I know what the answer is going to be, but like, how do you feel like you would perform on that show without having done 200 podcast interviews?
Well, first off, I would have sweat right through my shirt. Like, come on, let's be real. I would have been freaked out. I remember in 2019 when I stood on the TED stage and I was like, okay, this isn't even a huge TEDx audience. It was, it was good size, but it wasn't huge. And I was freaking out. And that was with a memorized, like, I know exactly what I'm going to say. But there is something really flowing about an interview. You don't know, and you never know whether you're even going to get that gotcha question. But at this point, I've had those. I've had the shock jocks try to rattle my cage. Honestly, I enjoy it. It's pretty entertaining for me. And I knew that I could step into that conversation and meet the interviewer exactly where they were and tailor my answers because I'm so practiced at meeting them where they are and riding that line of giving them new information, being the expert, but also not freaking them out, not going so far that they're actually like, oh, forget it. We're just going to toss this. And that is something you can only get from lots and lots of practice.
Yeah, I've just done podcasts, but I've done different types of podcasts. Like I was on a show recently where the host, it does come from that traditional media background. And so that you need tight answers
Yes.
with those types of interviews. So if you go straight to PR without having done a lot of podcast interviews, it's going to be difficult to like nail a short answer.
Right.
So,
Especially
yeah.
when people are asking for things and they want the short answer, but they also want a story. Right. And so I've been really working on this. I remember one of my first, one of the first people who worked with me deeply at Interview Connections was like, your answers are too long. Like they're just, they can't get the concise bite that they need out of it. What can you do? And what I realized is I wanted to tell the story because they were all asking for stories and the stories were too long. So I got really good at giving concise case study, like here, boom, just drop you in. And that's what people seem to really want, especially in the world of relationships, which is a lot of podcasts, a lot.
Yeah, relationships are huge. Like relationships are huge. But yes, there's a lot of relationship podcasts. We have a lot of clients who do Sun Paper for relationship coaching, and they do very well with podcast guesting. So
yeah, and there's a lot of specialization within there too, which has been really
yeah.
fun. I get to ask a lot of different kinds of questions.
Talk about your call to action. I often share your call to action because it's so brilliant.
Well, I have several CTAs now, Jess. So you
I'm
got
beating
me.
you, girl.
So you got me started on like, okay, have one, just have one. And I think having one is awesome because that's the audience is going to catch you. So I do have one. I'm like, hey, if you want to know where you are in the road from, yeah, maybe we want something new to, okay, we're ready to jump out of that non-monogamy airplane, go to joliequiz.com, take my quiz. You'll find out exactly where you are and whether you're ready. That was a great start, but actually I get interviewed on so many different topics that now I actually have several CTAs and I don't predict ahead of time which one I'm going to use. I just have my list and I decide in the moment which one is most tailored to this audience after we've had that 45-minute or 90-minute conversation. Like, where did we go? I have the jealousy roadmap. I have year of opening. I have open easier. There are all these different ones. And the key is for me to know what's going to serve their audience. How is their audience actually going to want to connect with me? And which is way easier than having just one, honestly.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Can you touch on one of the things I remember about you is that when you signed up with us for that first year, in your head, I think you had said like, I'm going to do this for at least 2 years or 3 years. Like you just had that mentality. Can you talk about that? Because that's so important to have that runway and that commitment.
I did. Well, this isn't my first rodeo. I have run businesses before, and I knew that in the past when I had taken that, like, I'm just going to do the bare minimum. I'm going to do exactly what's required. I have a history and plenty of data that told me that that would not work. That I would, right before I was going to experience success, I would be like, okay, I guess that only sort of worked. So I signed on with the mentality that I'm going to do this for 3 years. Like I'm doing this for 3 years, and we'll see where we are on the other side of that. It was a great benefit because along the way, you're going to go through the regular roller coasters of entrepreneurship. And podcast guesting has been the foundation. Like that's underneath everything else I'm doing. And I stopped thinking about it. I didn't second guess it, question it every year. I just let myself stay in that process. But when it was time to sign for year 4, I was like, yeah, I'm still in. I'm still in. This is still working really, really well.
I love that because we have that foresight and that big picture, because sometimes people are like, well, I'm gonna question it and see. I'm like, no, most of like you have all these interviews haven't even gone live yet. Like stick with it, keep it going, because people like look at you, Christina, like you guys have been here multiple years and the success stories are just bigger and bigger, but it does take that commitment. And that can be scary for sometimes. I'm sure there's people watching this that are just like, oh no, girl, like I just want to do this for a few months. What's your advice to people that do have that fear of that long-term commitment?
Well, I think about what is this in my business? If this is my marketing, if this is a primary form of my marketing, then all I have to ask myself is, well, how long do I plan to run this business? And if I plan to run the business for a long time, and that hasn't been true for me in every business. I have had some businesses where I'm like, yeah, a couple years, maybe 3, 4, and then yeah, I think I want to move on. But this is my work. This is my life's work. This is my research. This is my dedication. I'm in this for the long haul. So honestly, when you think about it that way, it is part of a framework of what you're building. And if you build it into your strategy, it's pretty easy to budget for it after that first, like, okay, you got to get over the hump of, I got to spend this money. I got to invest in myself. You're your best bet. So once you do that, it is easier to just realize, yeah, I got to fold that into what I'm doing.
Yeah, this metaphor that I got from Margie, and I don't know where she got it from, or maybe she made it up, but it was like this visual of a swimmer, like a competitive swimmer, swimming through the wall. Like they don't say, oh, the wall's coming up, I'm gonna slow down now. Like you swim through the wall. And so let's say you are gonna, sell your business in 2 years, swim through the wall, don't start landing the plane now. So yeah, I love that.
Also, it's not just for me. This hasn't just been marketing. It has also determined how I built the course so I run a program called the Year of Opening, and it is built off of the conversations that I've been having, like listening to people, hearing people's responses. So it's not just that I'm doing marketing. I'm also constantly in a conversation that helps me design the services that I'm providing. So it's a double investment, at least, probably more than that if I think about all the ways that it informs what I'm doing. I could choose another route, but I learn well through conversation. I'm especially as an external processor, it really helps me to be asked questions, right? So it's almost like having it almost draws the same thing out of me that a mastermind draws out of me in a way. It's different. It's not the same thing because I'm not talking to the expert. Instead, I am the expert. But as I hear myself work through the problems, answer the questions, especially the questions I don't expect, the ones that only somebody who's outside of my niche can ask me, entirely new aspects of my business have been born through that. That's irreplaceable.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's the best focus group that you can get. Like sometimes people want to try out a different niche or a different market or test a different offer. These podcast hosts and these audiences are the best way to figure out if there is money there, if there's interest there, if there's demand there. I love that.
Yeah, that's how I went from doing private work to group work. It was hearing people say over and over again what they needed was community, but also they needed a more affordable option. Well, I can provide those things. And I'm perfectly situated for it because I teach. That's what I do. So yeah, and this route was such a gentle way for me to say, okay, I'm going to make the switch. Enough people have told me I'm going to make the shift.
I love it. I love it. I could talk to you all day, Dr. Jolie. How can everyone connect with you and find you online?
Yeah, you can find me at joliehamilton.com for anything, including all of your questions about jealousy. I have a whole page dedicated to that.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much for being here. I love you.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks for having me.
All right, Seth Donlin. Where is Seth? Come on up.
Hello, folks. Hi, Jessica.
Seth, hello. Hi. Thank you so much for being here. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. You're welcome, and thanks for having me. My name is Seth Donlin. I am a brand building coach who actually specializes in helping people build their brand through podcast guesting. And I am where I am today. I mean, I don't want to make this overblown, but I am where I am today because of Interview Connections. Because my story is that what was it, 3 years ago or so, maybe 4 years ago, I was making a shift in my coaching and consulting business, and I was diving much more heavily into a niche, working with health, sport, and fitness professionals. Clients who, I had a large number of them in my client base. And I realized that if I wanted to up my game in my business and I wanted to be able to, charge more money, what I needed to do was really become an expert in one, for one type of client rather than a broad group of clients. And getting on podcasts was a way for me to generate instant credibility, right? Because I got together with Interview Connections. They started booking me on podcasts. Now, these hosts who have a year, 2 years, 3 years of a successful podcast where their audience looks to them as real experts in their field, and in this case, health, sport, and fitness, area, were bringing me on their shows and introducing me as an expert in working in their field. So I immediately was able to gain the kind of expertise, the aura of expertise and trust that these hosts had been generating over the years. It immediately, some of that accrued onto me, and it made it much easier for me to pivot into that new niche, even though I hadn't previously been focusing solely on that. Well, let's fast forward a couple of years. The industry changed. COVID came along. My clients all went online. Lots of other marketing professionals chased them online. I had a lot more competition. My business was still doing fine, but I wasn't seeing the incredible growth that I had been previously seeing. And I realized I've been increasingly having my clients go on podcasts, and I had been increasingly working with them to become better podcast guests because it was such a benefit to my business and my marketing that, of course, I wanted to teach my clients how to do that. And I quickly realized, wait a minute, this is the next big growth area, and this is my next pivot. Now what I need to be doing is not specializing as a generalist marketer and brand development expert. I need to be focusing on podcasting, podcast guesting, and teaching people how to build their brands through podcast guesting. And it's been, once again, it's been a fantastic experience working with Jess and Margie and their team. Like many of the other people that have spoken before me, there are so many benefits outside the ones that you might think of. Kind of doubling down on what Dr. Jolie was just saying, that idea of the information, the feedback that you get from being a guest, getting questions from the host are really invaluable. Because here's the thing, as experts, we're in this strange space where we know a lot about our field and we assume that our most valuable information is X. And then when we actually start talking with our clients, quite often we find that it's Y. Or over time, it may, our X may have been important, very important, and it still is, but now people are much more interested in Z. And that becomes really clear when you're on podcasts, because hosts ask you questions and you give this answer that you're like, oh man, here's the real juice. And they're like, oh, cool, that was a good answer. And then they ask you some other question. And you're like, okay, whatever. Oh, I'll answer this question. It's not all that important. You answer the question, and then their eyes light up and they start speaking to their audience. Did you hear that? Write that note down. Come back, pin this part of the interview. And it makes me realize, okay, like I didn't think that part of my work, I mean, it's all important, but I didn't realize that part was really what people were going to latch onto and get really excited about. So now when I'm crafting posts for LinkedIn or whatever other social media channel, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. When I'm posting, crafting posts for that, that's what I'm going to start writing about. I'm going to write about that in 15 different ways because that's what hosts have been really responding to, right? So you get all of these additional added benefits to the things that are more obvious, like, your visibility and, the opportunity to give a CTA at the end so that you're pitching to, you're pitching to hundreds of people per episode times 30, you're going to be pitching to thousands of people. It's powerful.
Yeah, I love that. I love in this session where you can share like what are the different benefits, because I obviously focus in masterclass on here's how you're going to grow your business and get more leads and get more sales. But it's like, yeah, what if you spend all this time posting and marketing a certain message that's just not landing and you think there's something wrong with your offer, when in reality, like, your audience actually needs to hear something else. And when you get that instant feedback from a podcast host, I mean, I can relate to that. I had a podcast host who was like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't even realize like there were services that did what you did. And I'm over here like talking about the differences between me and other people. I'm like, wait, there are people that don't even know this service even exists. And so it does remind us that like what we think we need to talk about isn't always what our audience wants us to talk about.
That is so true. And the other thing is that, as again, as was said earlier in the hour, you learn a lot about yourself as you are talking to different hosts over and over and over again. Different hosts are going to ask different questions, which are going to challenge you slightly to communicate your message in a slightly different way. And oftentimes that will, not just help you spot like flaws in your messaging or areas that you're not taking full advantage of, but can lead to, as you're suggesting, you to realize, okay, well, I'm over here. I mean, Dr. Jolie was just talking about it. She was, she wasn't being herself. She was talking about A. She should have been talking about B, right? And that, you can look at it one way and you can say, I just spent a bunch of money to come on podcasts and I wasted half my money because I talked about the wrong thing. But, or you could say, that was money well spent because otherwise I'd still be talking about the wrong thing, right?
Yes.
And it's not ultimately right. You're not just getting one return. You're not just learning that you were talking about the wrong thing. You make the switch, you start talking about the right thing. You're still seeing return on those later episodes, and you're probably seeing some smaller return on those former episodes. You get your content that you can repurpose. You get so many things out of it. And any one of those is probably worth the investment, but you get all three or four or five or whatever, when we tally up all the benefits, however many there are, and there's lots of them, they're all probably worth the full investment, and you get all of them for one price, which is just amazing.
I love it. Any other words of wisdom or recommendations that you can share? And then after that, just, yeah, let everyone know how they can find you and connect with you online.
Yeah, I would say that two things and two related things is that if you're going to do this, and this isn't for everybody, right? A great thing about a meeting like this is you kick the tires a little bit, you figure out, is it for me, is it not for me? If you are going to do it, make sure two things. Make sure that you are ready to do it and you're ready to be courageous and vulnerable. And again, as Dr. Jolie was talking about, don't be communicating the message that you think is safe and that you should communicate the message that is true and that you need to communicate. And that's where you're going to see your real benefit, right? You're going to get your maximum ROI on taking the risk to be as authentic as you possibly can. And the related thing is, when you're on podcasts, don't be passive. Be very active in your podcasts, right? A lot of people, particularly early on, will go on podcasts and will kind of you're along for the ride. The host is in control. You sit back, the host asks you a question, you answer the question, then the host asks you another question, you answer that question, and then you come to the end and great, you're ready to give your CTA. Hopefully the host led the conversation in a direction that matches up well with the CTA that you want to give, or if you're like Dr. Jolie, you have like 5 or 6 different CTAs. But if you're not, well, maybe the conversation didn't quite lead you there, and now your CTA probably isn't going to hit as well, right? As the expert being brought on the show, you're really being invited by the host to co-create the episode with the host. And that means taking active control, not fighting for dominance, but taking active control of the show. So if a host asks you a question that maybe isn't the right question, you can say, okay, we'll answer that question, but first I want to finish answering this question that I don't think we fully explored, or I want to tell you this other thing because I think that this is really more important, but then I'll come back, right? So then you talk about the thing that you want to talk about, and then you circle back and you quickly answer the question that the host asked, so you're not being rude. But that way you lead the conversation in the direction that you want the conversation to go, which is what the host wants. They wouldn't bring you on as an expert. In most cases, you're going to know way more about your subject than your host does. And so your host is going to be happy when you drive the direction in the direction that it should go in. And once again, you will see your greatest ROI when you start being more active like that.
I love that. I was on a podcast last month, and this was actually in the green room. I'm going to give you an example of how I also was co-creating and co-driving the car of this podcast. In the green room chat, I asked the host just oh, tell me about why'd you start the podcast? And in his answer, I learned that he had sold a business, then now he's starting a new brand, new venture. And I'm like, oh, have you done a podcast episode about that story? Because that's really interesting. He's like, not really. I did a 10-minute intro up. I'm like, Nick, you need to share that story. And I can't believe I had the guts to say this, but I said, I'll come back on the show and interview you for your own podcast about your story. Talk about co-creating.
I was just on Nick's show, and he actually related that story to me from the opposite side. Yeah.
So, amazing things would happen when you actively participate in the podcast. This was in the green room, so I didn't put him on the spot on the actual show, but my interview came out this week, The Business Owner's Journey. And then next week, his episode will be me interviewing him. So actively, hosts love that when you actively participate in the show. I love that. Thank you for sharing that tip.
You're welcome.
So Seth, how can everyone find you online?
Well, if you want to chat with me and you want me to give you a free audit of your podcasting strategy, you can reach me at reachseth.com. And that will take you to my Calendly booking page. If you want to just lurk, which many people do, come find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Seth Donlin there, so it's pretty easy to find me.
Reachseth.com, Seth Donlin on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for being here, Seth. And thank you everyone for joining us for the masterclass. Go to interviewconnections.com/call. I want you to be one of our next success stories. I want you here on our next masterclass sharing about how your business has grown because you invested, you got outside your comfort zone, you took action, you got on podcasts, you implemented what you learned, and you saw the benefits and you experienced them in your own business. So book a call at interviewconnections.com/call. So you can work alongside these other amazing entrepreneurs that you saw speak here today. Again, our Amplified Authority program guarantees that you'll be booked on 30 podcasts that are targeted, that are quality, well-established, speaking to your ideal clients. And we will audit your interviews. We will coach you. We will help you make the most of your appearances. So you're getting booked to speak. You're getting new clients. You're growing your business, but you've got to take action. Book your consultation call at interviewconnections.com/call. If you haven't watched all 4 sessions, you can find them all on the replay page at interviewconnections.com/replays. Again, discounts end Monday, March 31st at midnight. So book your call now. We've got space over the next several days to meet with you. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for being here live. Thank you for watching the recording. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of our speakers. Thank you all so much for speaking, and we will see you on your calls. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Bye.